G'day guys, Solid here. Hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another episode of Adventure News. I was worried I wouldn't have too much to talk about, but all of a sudden the stories started bubbling to the surface. We're talking about a BMW 1400 GS, a smaller version of the Pan America, a 450cc Himalayan from Royal Enfield, and possibly the biggest news, a Tenere 900 triple. Yes, you heard that right. So let's just jump into all these fantastic topics. There are rumours that there is a smaller version of the very successful Pan America in the works at Harley-Davidson. Now, the piece of news that confirms this is very tenuous. I want to point that out. I would put this in the category of rumour for the moment, but it is very encouraging news. Customers have noticed in Harley-Davidson accessory catalogue the model number RA975. It could be a typo. Personally though, I don't think it's a typo. The RA is for the Pan America, the 975 is obviously the engine size. Why is this interesting? Well, we know that that 1250cc motor actually has a 975cc variant. How do we know this? The concept model, the Bronx, that Harley released some time ago had a 975cc version of the 1250 motor in it. So we know that the 975 motor does exist, and we know that the RA model number is ascribed to the Pan America. It doesn't take much to put those two together and go, that really looks like a smaller version of the Pan America. Now, why is that exciting news? Well, Harley have done really well with the Pan America, and say what you will about Harley-Davidson, I always like seeing new adventure bikes, regardless of whether I personally would buy them or not. It's just really interesting to me to see how manufacturers execute that and how they really try and find their niches and offer them to different walks of people, as we're all very different, so we all need very different motorcycles. And I'm more excited for this potential 975cc version because a smaller motor could potentially mean a lighter weight. It's hard for a lot of people to afford a flagship Pan America. I'm hoping that this will not only be lighter but also more affordable than the current 1250. So if you're in the market for a Pan America but they're a little bit too expensive and a little bit overweight, well, you could be in luck because the Pan America 975 could be on the way. The next item is big news, but also a big rumor. This one possibly even more tenuous than the Harley-Davidson, and that is the potential Yamaha 900 Tenere. Yes, you heard that right. So this is from a French publication called Moto Station, and they're claiming that they have knowledge that Yamaha are in development of a 900cc Tenere, which is really exciting news, but also very hard to tell whether it's legitimate or not, because basically we have to take it on face value that this Moto Station isn't just telling porcupines. I'm really not sure how solid the information is here, but if we do try and pick it apart, it does make some sense. Yamaha do have a 900cc triple just sitting there begging to be put in an adventure bike. Triumph have been doing it successfully for years, so why not Yamaha? We have an engine, we also have a gap in the lineup. We've got the 700 and we no longer actually have the 1200. So we really do have a gap in the market at Yamaha for a bigger, more road orientated, or oriented as you like to say in the US, adventure bike. So the specificity of this article is encouraging. They're saying that this 900 Tenere is actually a replacement of the 1200 rather than a bigger version of the Tenere 700s. What they're saying in this article is that this Tenere 900 will be more refined, more upmarket than the 700. It'll be more of the creature comforts and the bells and whistles you come to expect on big flagship adventure bikes. The other big news that they are stating is that this will have a 19-inch front wheel. What this suggests is this is not going to be nearly as dirt focused as the Tenere 700. This is going to be more of a compromise to give it better road performance whilst not having so much off-road performance. So this is going to be more of an adventure tourer, or at least just a general adventure bike. Think of this as the 900cc triple reimagining of the Tenere 1200. It's a really interesting idea. That triple motor from Yamaha is a gem of an engine. Of course, it is probably going to be quite heavy, and yes, it probably won't be very dirt focused, but for my personal needs, I already have my dirt focused dual sport that's very light that I take into my really difficult off-roading, at least difficult for my meager skills. What I look for in a second motorcycle is something to really do the long road touring that can do the dirt roads, and if it's really comes down to it, get me through a tricky section of off-road if I have to. But I'm really looking for something that can commute, do long distances and is very comfortable while still having the option of doing the dirt roads admirably. Keep in mind, this could just be for clicks and generating eyeballs on the page. I'd love to know your thoughts, chuck them down below. Moving on to the OG of adventure bikes, BMW. I covered a story last year where we talked about the spy shots of the BMW R1300 GS and the M1300 GS, which looks like it's a very high spec version of the regular 1300 GS. And we've got further confirmation that those bikes are in existence. But the bigger story is that there is an even bigger adventure bike coming from BMW. It looks like there's going to be an R1400 GS. This is possibly why Pluto was demoted as the 9th largest planet from the sun. Maybe astronomers knew that BMW were coming out with this 1400 GS. So how exactly do we know that there is a BMW R1400 GS on the way? Well, motorcycle.com have been doing some digging, and it turns out on BMW's own service request website that they accidentally listed these future models. Accidentally. Who knows whether it was on purpose or not? It really is hard to tell in this modern internet age, but for whatever reason, it was on their service request website, so it listed the R1300 GS, the M1300 GS, and this bigger R1400 GS. We don't have any further news on this bigger R1400 GS than that. So I'm wondering what BMW are trying to attempt here with a 1400, a 1300, and this M1300 in the middle. There could be a few directions they go here. They could have the R1300 GS be the off-road normal version that we've come to expect from the GS model, spoke wheels, decent off-road, great adventure tourer. Then we've got the M model, which a lot of people are talking about as the more hardcore off-road version, the more high-performance off-road version of the regular R1300. So this bigger 1400, it doesn't really make sense to me that this bigger 1400 would be the more off-roady version. I think this might be the more road-going variant. If they were to go that way, it will possibly be the one with the cast wheels to do the road touring duty. So I've just realized that that's not necessarily the case with this BMW 1400 GS. We could be seeing what has happened in the middleweight adventure category for BMW, where the more off-road focused version of the adventure bike is the bigger motor. So the F850 GS, the engine that isn't detuned, is in the off-road focused motorcycle, whereas the detuned version in the F750 GS is the more road orientated or oriented version of the motorcycles. That could also be a strong possibility. The other way that this could go is that this will be two completely different model sections. So we'll have the 1300 GS ecosystem with all the different variants, and we'll have this 1400 GS with all its model variants. I'm not sure why BMW would do that with only 100 cc's to separate the two. That really is a head scratcher. Of course, that is all just big speculation on my part, as we really don't have too much details other than the spy shots last year and this leak from BMW itself. So I'd love to know your thoughts. What do you think BMW are up to here with a 1300, an M1300, and now a 1400 GS? We've actually got evidence that it now exists. It's been homologated in China, so we now have official evidence that this bike is under development and does exist. So that is very encouraging news for anyone that's been following this bigger version of the 502. This is exciting news because the TRK 502 is very popular in Europe. A bigger version will be exciting to a lot of people, namely because you'll be able to get into a big adventure bike at a fairly low cost. Now, some people are going to be against that particular region of the world, but for some people really it is hard to walk past the value of these motorcycles, and with Italian design they really don't look as odd as Chinese motorcycles have in the past. As for specifications, it actually looks like the frame on this is going to be different from what people were speculating of last year, so that is interesting. The engine is stated to be the same as CF Moto's 693cc or 700cc if you want to round it up power plant. It's a parallel twin. It's liquid cooled, fuel injected, and makes around 75 horsepower. Also, it's rumored to have spoke wheels with a 19-inch front and a 17 rear, as well as a cast wheel model as well for more road touring. Much like the 502, this is more of an adventure tourer rather than a hardcore off-road adventure bike. Now, the one thing I get worried about with Benelli in particular is the weight. The 502 is extremely heavy for a little 500cc adventure bike. Now, that can actually be in its favor sometimes with the kind of riding you're doing out on the open road, high wind scenarios. That weight will give you stability. The other big question, of course, will be the price. Typically, these bikes are very good value for money, but will that be reason enough? Some people are going to love that lower price point and being able to get an adventure bike that they can actually afford. These aren't very strong rumours at the moment. We've seen one really dubious image from Bike Whale of the concept, which really is a rough concept if you're asking me as far as concept pictures go. But now we've got what looks like a spy shot of the Himalayan 450. Now, it is very hard to tell whether this is a Himalayan at all or even a Royal Enfield. But if you do put it up next to the scruffy picture from Bike Whale, it does bear some resemblances to that concept image that we've seen previously. Now, the bigger question is, how legitimate is this picture? That is an impossible question to answer. No one's been able to verify 100%. Now let's talk about the idea of a 450cc Himalayan, as that really is an interesting idea. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but as I like to characterize it, it's definitely going to be someone's shot of whiskey. But the idea of a single 450cc motorcycle, which they are saying this Himalayan might make 40 horsepower, I'll believe it when I see it, but if that is to be true, that really is a tantalizing specification, because if they can keep the weight down on this bike, offer that 40 horsepower, and you've got the characteristics of the comfort of an adventure bike with some of the more hardcore off-roading ability of a dual sport, that really is what a lot of people have been asking for. There are a lot of ways this could go wrong as well. They could make it too heavy, they could fall short in the power department, and I really do hope that they get it right. Let me know down below, what would you love to see specification wise from this rumored 450cc Himalayan? Let me know your thoughts on any of those motorcycles, chuck them down below, but do keep them respectful. And as always guys, I've been solid. Don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one guys. Catch you later.